36 years after slavery. And the man who said that, Booker T. Washington, was born a slave. He was a slave till he was about 10 years old. There was a series of articles back in 1963 in a magazine called Ebony. Ebony is still published today. It's a black magazine. And all of these high black achievers were asked the following question: what kind of advice would you want to hear if you were young today? If I were young today, what advice, what prospects, what are my hopes, what are my dreams, what are my aspirations if I were young today? One, a federal judge named Herman Moore, said this in 1963. And he made no reference to race-based preferences, no reference to set-aside, no reference to affirmative action. Here's what he said in 1963, quote, "Broader opportunities are opening today for Negro youth in fields which have been previously closed to them, such as engineering and science. There are also wider opportunities to be lawyers, diplomats, judges, economists, organization leaders. Negroes have greater chances at apprenticeship in the skilled trades as well. At the same time, the young Negro must prepare himself to be part of an expanding world, and by accomplishment to lead in its progress. Performance is the key." This one, A. Philip Randolph, is a union leader. "If I were young today," quote, "Negro youth must offer the future the same things that white youth offer, and they must have the faith that there is no basic racial difference in potential for achievement, moral, intellectual, or spiritual. The future holds great opportunities for those who are prepared to meet and face the challenge of this age of science, technology, industrialism, and social and economic and political change." This one is Paul Williams. Paul Williams is the architect, the so-called architect of the stars. If you've ever been LAX and you see that building that looks like something out of the Jetsons, it's called the Theme Building. There's a restaurant there. He designed that. And he said when he got out of architecture school, nobody would give him a job because of his race. So he sent letters to a whole bunch of them. Well, I'll read you what he said. Quote, "I remember my first job hunting week. I made a list of 25 architects from the telephone book, which I arranged in sequence to location. I made the tour, and after each visit, I made a notation as to whether the answer was no or maybe next week, and whether it was said with a smile or a frown. If it was a smile, I would return next week with some of my sketches, which I carried in a smart portfolio. That week, I received 3 offers for a job with salaries ranging from $3 a week to nothing per week. One just wanted me to be an office boy. This was a job I accepted because there were important architects working there. To my surprise, they broke their contract the very first week and paid me a salary of $3, which apparently was pretty competitive in those days." What's the point? In 2015, we're still talking about racism holding people back. We're still talking about the Voting Rights Act under siege just because some states want voter ID, which the majority of blacks support as well. What you're doing is training people to think and behave like victims. It is very rare for a police officer to shoot anybody, kill anybody, let alone an unarmed person, let alone a black unarmed person. In the last year for which they have numbers, 2012, CDC said about 140 blacks were killed by cops. Over 300 whites were killed by cops. Now, it is true that blacks were several times more likely to be killed by cops, but blacks were also several times more likely to be involved in crime. And that part of it, when you act as if a slave is the same thing as a convict, it's absolutely ridiculous. Monique won an Oscar for Precious, and she said that she was told by her director, Lee Daniels, that she's perceived as being difficult and tacky, and as a result, she's lost out on several roles as a result. And she's not playing the race card. Apparently what